Breaking news just escalated the trade war, and it's threatening food security across North America. This shocking development could change the foundation of our food systems. As President Trump's tariffs continue to cripple Canadian agricultural exports, worth up to $22 billion annually, sources from both governments confirm that Washington has quietly reached out to Ottawa, requesting emergency help with wheat and grain supplies. But what happens next? It's not what anyone expected. Here's the twist. Prime Minister Mark Carney's response is a game changer. Instead of accepting America's offer, Carney has doubled down, pivoting towards China. He's signing agricultural deals that could lock American buyers out of Canadian grain markets for years to come. The stakes are massive, and the real question is, what does this mean for you? For American consumers, this could trigger food price inflation like we've never seen before. What exactly unfolded in those crucial hours? What are the deeper implications of this trade war? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about global agriculture. Here's what we know so far. President Trump's tariffs have been devastating. Imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, they're slapping 25-35% tariffs on Canadian agricultural exports, including wheat, which Americans rely on for everything from bread to pasta. But instead of backing down, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is doubling down. And that's where this story takes a shocking turn. Instead of working with the U.S. to restore agricultural trade, Carney has made a bold move, pivoting towards China. The government has signed major agricultural deals with Beijing, dramatically cutting China's tariffs on Canadian crops. This could lock the U.S. out of Canadian grain markets for years, with no quick way back in. So what does this mean for the average American consumer? We're talking about skyrocketing food prices. Experts are already warning this could disrupt food supply chains across North America in ways we haven't seen in modern history. And here's the kicker. This isn't just an isolated trade spat. This is the beginning of a major shift in global agriculture. And if things keep going this way, it could rewrite the way we source and pay for food in the future. The numbers are staggering. Canada exports $18 to $22 billion worth of agricultural goods annually, and a significant portion of that, wheat, canola, and other grains, have always been crucial to the U.S. food system. But now those exports are facing massive hurdles. Thanks to Trump's tariffs, Canadian wheat is locked out of U.S. markets, hitting American consumers where it hurts the most, their wallets. Here's the shocking part. Carney's pivot to China isn't just a strategic shift, it's a complete overhaul. In Beijing, he signed a deal that slashed tariffs on Canadian canola from 85% down to just 15%. This isn't a small move. This deal sets the stage for Canada to reduce its reliance on the U.S. cow and secure a long-term, reliable partnership with China. Notice what's missing here? There's no sign that the U.S. is ready to offer Canada a similar deal. With Canadian markets now locked into China's embrace, the U.S. has effectively been sidelined. And this shift, it's happening right under America's nose. As the situation intensifies, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just a trade dispute. It's the beginning of a global agricultural reordering. What Carney's doing is a dramatic break from decades of U.S.-Canada agricultural cooperation. And here's the most unsettling part. This isn't the first time a major agricultural disruption has had catastrophic consequences. Think back to the 1980s, when the U.S. imposed grain sanctions on the Soviet Union. The results were devastating. U.S. farmers lost markets, and it took years to rebuild those relationships. What's happening now with Canada is eerily similar, but this time it's America actively pushing its neighbors into the arms of foreign competitors. This isn't just a short-term issue. We're witnessing the normalization of something that should never have become normal. For years, the U.S. and Canada have shared one of the most integrated agricultural markets in the world. But now, because of tariffs and shifting alliances, that integration is unraveling. And the ripple effects will be felt far beyond the trade war. Here's where things get even more alarming. As the U.S. and Canada drift further apart, Canada is locking in more deals with China, creating a new trade relationship that could leave American buyers out in the cold for good. We're talking about a strategic pivot that's not just about tariffs anymore. It's about the long-term survival of entire industries. Let's take a closer look at the numbers. China is already one of Canada's largest wheat buyers. Over the past 5 years, China has purchased about 10% of Canada's wheat exports. Under Carney's new strategy, that share is set to double. as Canada aggressively seeks to secure even more long-term contracts with Chinese buyers. Here's where the plot really thickens. Carney's vision for the future isn't just about reducing dependence on the U.S. He's publicly stated that China is a more reliable partner than the United States. Let that sink in for a moment. A Canadian Prime Minister has declared that China, a country with a history of detaining Canadian citizens, is now seen as a more dependable trading partner than democratic America. This bold move doesn't just change the landscape of trade, it forces us to rethink the entire concept of global food security. And it's only going to get worse. As if this wasn't already chaotic enough, the situation is escalating on multiple fronts. First, Canadian farmers are starting to make critical planting decisions based on the reality of these new trade deals. They're looking at China as a long-term partner, and those contracts are already in the works. It's not just about wheat anymore. It's about diverting the entire agricultural supply chain away from the U.S. Second, small and medium-sized businesses throughout the supply chain are already feeling the pressure. Take H. Heartland Mills, a family-owned grain processor in Kansas. They've been buying Canadian wheat for generations, but now they're facing a 28% price increase on raw materials. They can't pass these costs on to consumers without losing their contracts to foreign competitors. Their options are bleak: absorb the loss or face bankruptcy. Finally, here's the kicker. Trucking companies, which specialize in cross-border agricultural transport, are seeing volumes drop by 40–60%. These aren't large corporations. These are small family businesses that have been operating these routes for decades, and now they're going bankrupt. And with them, the specialized logistics capabilities that have kept this supply chain running smoothly for years. What happens if this continues? The entire agricultural infrastructure that has supported North American food systems for decades will begin to unravel. And when it's gone, rebuilding it won't be easy, if it's even possible. Now let's shift gears and think about the real-world consequences of this disruption. It's not just about tariffs or trade deals anymore. This is about you and your daily life. Food prices are already on the rise, and it's only going to get worse. Take Jennifer Patterson, a third-generation wheat farmer from North Dakota. She's been buying Canadian wheat for over 40 years, but now, thanks to tariffs, her costs have skyrocketed by 30%. She's scrambling to find alternatives from countries like Australia and Argentina, but those options come at a premium. As a result, her margins are getting crushed, and the decades of cross-border cooperation that have supported her business are evaporating. What does this mean for the average American consumer? For families like Jennifer's, it's a survival game. The price of everything from bread to pasta to cereal is climbing, 12% higher to be exact. For the average American family, that's an additional $960 in food costs every year. And that's just the beginning. But here's the real kicker. Once these trade relationships shift, once Canadian farmers lock into long-term contracts with Chinese buyers, reversing that will be a monumental challenge. It's not just a matter of trading partners, it's a matter of survival in an increasingly unstable market. If this feels familiar to you, say so in the comments. You're not alone in this. Now let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just a crisis of tariffs or trade deals. It's a failure of systems. How did we get here? Why is it happening? And what's allowing it to unfold this way? The answer lies in the mechanisms of leverage, incentives, and, most disturbingly, fear. The U.S. government has weaponized food trade in a bid to solve political issues, but in doing so, it's set off a chain reaction that's reshaping agricultural supply chains across the continent. Here's the cold reality. The U.S. economy is built on leverage, the idea that American dominance in global markets can keep supply chains in check. But by imposing tariffs on one of its closest neighbors, America has disrupted that very leverage. Canada is now looking elsewhere for security, and China is taking full advantage of this shift. The real insight here: the system that's been in place for decades, the system that's ensured stability in food production, is crumbling. And while the world watches in shock, the U.S. is inadvertently creating a new global agricultural order, one where America no longer holds the same dominant position it once did. Looking ahead, two possible paths are emerging, and neither is ideal for the U.S. or its consumers. The first path, if the U.S. doesn't offer any meaningful tariff relief or negotiate new trade terms, the shift towards China will only intensify. Canadian farmers will lock in those long-term deals with China, and once those markets solidify, it will be nearly impossible to re-enter. This would mean a permanent fracture in the North American agricultural system. But there's another possible path. If Washington responds with tariff relief or a new trade agreement, things could stabilize for now. But even then, the damage has been done. The long-term effects on food prices and supply chains will take years to undo. And by then, the global market could have already moved on, with China and other countries solidifying their positions as top agricultural players. The uncertainty is palpable. With every decision, a new twist is added to the story. And every moment that passes without resolution brings us closer to a future where North America's once powerful agricultural integration is a thing of the past. This is the key takeaway. When you use food as a weapon in a trade war with your closest allies, don't be surprised when they find new customers and when your own families feel the consequences at the grocery store. We're seeing a fundamental shift in global agricultural trade, one that the U.S. is largely responsible for, yet is now powerless to reverse. Food prices are already climbing, and as supply chains fracture, this could lead to a new era of volatility in the market. The question remains, how long before this turns into a full-blown crisis? If you want to stay ahead of stories like this, stories the mainstream media won't cover in full, make sure to hit subscribe and the bell icon. The agricultural alliances that have supported North America for decades are already collapsing, and what happens next could change everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.